A single mother, working nights to keep the lights on, pours her soul into a secret blog about raising her little boy. She never dreamed her words would reach the eyes of a billionaire, until one night he read her story, broke down in tears, and sent her a message that would change everything. But when her son, innocent and unfiltered, whispers one shocking sentence in public, "Mommy says you're my daddy," the world explodes. The headlines scream, the whispers turn cruel. Her job is on the line. His empire is at risk. Now, with the world against them, one mother's truth and one billionaire's broken heart collide in a fight for dignity, love, and second chances. Will compassion be enough to silence scandal? Or will this one whispered truth destroy them both? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Steam rose in lazy wisps through the fluorescent lights of the hotel laundry room. The hum of dryers and the sharp scent of bleach filled the air at 3 in the morning. Mari Alvarez's fingers moved steadily over the warm cotton uniforms, creating neat stacks that would soon clothe the hotel's army of workers. Beside her, Ruth Jenkins swayed gently as she hummed, "Amazing Grace," her weathered hands moving with practiced efficiency. The old hymn seemed to make the harsh lighting softer somehow, like a blessing over their pre-dawn work. "Child, you're 1,000,000 miles away," Ruth said, pausing her melody. She adjusted her reading glasses and peered at Mari. "What's rolling around in that pretty head of yours?" Mari smiled, tucking a loose strand of dark hair behind her ear. "Just thinking about Jonah. He had such a hard day at school yesterday. Those fancy children giving him trouble again?" Ruth's voice carried a protective edge. "Some boys made fun of his shoes." Mari's hands stilled on a chef's jacket. "But you know what he did? He just smiled and said a prayer for them right there in the cafeteria." Ruth clicked her tongue. "That boy's got more grace in his little finger than most folks got in their whole body." Mari glanced at the clock on the wall, then reached for her phone in her uniform pocket. "I need to write it down, Miss Ruth. Do you mind watching the door?" "Go on, baby, I'll keep watch." Ruth positioned herself near the entrance, resuming her hymn a little louder. Mari's fingers flew over her phone screen as she opened her blog. "Quiet homes, loud hearts." The words poured out. "Mustard prayers. My 7-year-old son taught me about grace today. While I was pressing stains from strangers' clothes, trying to earn enough for new shoes to replace his worn-out ones, he was teaching lessons that no amount of money can buy. They teased him about the holes and the scuffs, called his brown skin dirty. But my boy? He bowed his head right there and whispered, 'God bless them. They must be hurting inside to say mean things.' Tonight, before my shift, he caught me trying to scrub mustard from my uniform. 'Mama,' he said, 'let me pray over it.' His small hands touched the yellow stain, and he stuttered out the sweetest words. 'Dear God, help the mustard come out so Mama doesn't get in trouble, and thank you that yellow is a happy color. I fold clothes in a basement while others sleep in penthouses above. But my son's prayers reach just as high as their elevator buttons, maybe higher.'" Mari hit post and quickly tucked her phone away, returning to her folding. Ruth gave her a knowing smile. "Your words are going to matter to somebody someday," Ruth said. "Mark my words." The night shift crawled on until dawn began to paint the sky in gentle pinks. Mari's feet ached as she climbed the stairs to their small apartment, but her heart felt lighter for having shared her story. She found Jonah half awake in his narrow bed, his dark eyes blinking sleepily. "Mama?" "I'm here, mi amor." She sat on the edge of his bed, running her fingers through his curls. "Did you have a bad dream?" He shook his head. "Just missed you. I missed you too." She pressed a kiss to his forehead. "But it's still early. Close those eyes for me. Will you sing the song? Like Miss Ruth does?" Mari's voice was soft as she sang. "Amazing Grace," watching as Jonah's eyes grew heavy. Before he drifted off completely, she carefully lifted his worn sneakers from beside the bed. Kneeling on the thin carpet, Mari held the shoes in her lap. "Lord," she whispered, "protect his feet and his heart. Let him walk tall no matter what shoes he wears." She touched each scuff mark gently, as if they were battle scars earned in the war against poverty. 20 stories above the city, In a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Theo Park sat alone in the blue glow of his computer screen. The board meeting had been brutal, full of sharp words about market share and profit margins. His throat felt raw from defending decisions they called soft. His cursor hovered over another financial report when a notification caught his eye, a blog post someone had shared in his feed. Mustard prayers. He began to read, and something inside his carefully maintained composure cracked. The words about the little boy's prayer over a mustard stain brought back memories of his mother's hands, dark with industrial cleaner, reaching to straighten his collar before school. Theo's vision blurred as he read about the son praying for those who mocked him. A tear splashed onto his mahogany desk, followed by another. He hadn't cried since Sarah's funeral 3 years ago, hadn't allowed himself that luxury. But here, in the pre-dawn silence of his office, surrounded by evidence of his success, a hotel maid's blog post about her son's prayers broke through his walls. His shoulders shook as he wept, not just for the boy with worn-out shoes, but for all the prayers his own mother had whispered over his threadbare clothes so many years ago. The city began to wake below his window, but Theo Park sat motionless, letting the tears fall, letting a stranger's words remind him of what it meant to be human. Chapter 2. The DM. Chapter 1. Mustard Prayers. Scene 2. Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Theo Park's penthouse office, casting long shadows across his minimalist desk. The city stretched out below like a metallic ocean, buildings glinting in the early light. His phone buzzed again, another message from the board about quarterly projections. But his attention remained fixed on the blog post filling his screen. Tonight, my 7-year-old taught me about faith. While I scrubbed at a mustard stain on my uniform, his small hands covered mine. God can clean anything, Mommy, he whispered, even though his stutter usually makes him shy with words. We prayed over that yellow spot together, his voice strong and sure. Theo's fingers traced the edge of his phone case. He'd read the post a dozen times since discovering it at 3 a.m., each word hitting him deeper than the last. The writer's username was simple. At Quiet Homes, Loud Hearts. Something about her words, their raw honesty, their gentle strength, reminded him of his own mother's hands, perpetually scented with laundry soap and kimchi. He closed his eyes, remembering how she'd worked 2 housekeeping jobs after his father's death. The memory of her humming hymns while folding other people's clothes squeezed his chest. Without overthinking it, he opened the blog's direct message feature and began typing. Your words reminded me of my mother's hands. She was a housekeeper too, raising me alone after we lost my father. She would have loved your son's mustard prayers. I know what it's like to wear hand-me-downs and feel different. I'd like to help if you'll let me. Theo Park. His thumb hovered over the send button. The message felt too personal, too revealing for a man who rarely shared anything of himself. But something about this anonymous writer's story demanded truth in return. He pressed send. Across town, Mari's alarm chirped softly. She blinked away exhaustion, her muscles still heavy from the night shift. Through the thin walls of their apartment, she could hear Mrs. Chen already sweeping the building's stairwell. Jonah, mi amor, she called softly, touching her son's shoulder. Time for school. Jonah stirred, his dark curls wild against the pillow. 5 more minutes? Not today, baby. Remember, you have show and tell. That got him moving. He'd been practicing all week to share his favorite book about space without stuttering. Mari's heart squeezed, watching him carefully smooth his worn uniform shirt, the same one they'd prayed over yesterday. While Jonah ate his cereal, Mari checked her phone, expecting the usual morning messages from Ruth about the day's laundry schedule. Instead, her eyes widened at the notification from her blog. Direct message from @TheoPark. She nearly dropped her phone. Everyone knew that name. The tech billionaire who'd revolutionized clean energy storage. What was he doing reading her little blog about motherhood and midnight shifts? Her hands shook slightly as she opened the message. Reading his words about his mother, about understanding hand-me-downs, tears pricked at her eyes. The sincerity in his message felt almost too intimate, like a secret shared in a confessional. Mommy, You're crying! Jonah's worried voice snapped her attention back. Happy tears, mi cielo, she assured him, quickly wiping her eyes. Someone just said something very nice about our prayers. At work, Ruth noticed something was different. You're glowing like Easter morning, she observed, sorting sheets. Either you won the lottery, or that blog of yours is working miracles. Mari busied herself with folding, avoiding Ruth's knowing eyes. Just feeling blessed today, she said carefully. She wasn't ready to share Theo's message yet. It felt too fragile, too precious to expose to the light of day. The hours ticked by, in a blur of linens and uniforms. Mari's mind kept returning to the message, wondering how to respond. What could she possibly say to a billionaire who'd opened his heart to her story? That night, after tucking Jonah in and listening to his prayers, Mari sat cross-legged on her bed with her phone. The cursor blinked at her for long minutes before she finally began typing. I never thought these words would reach someone like you. Thank you. Her finger trembled as she hit send, releasing her simple truth into the digital void. Chapter 3. Hope in the Inbox. 2 days later, the late morning sun filtered through the hotel room's sheer curtains as Mari and Ruth worked in comfortable silence. Mari tucked crisp corners on the king-sized bed while Ruth dusted the dresser with practiced strokes. The familiar rhythm of their work filled the space, the soft swish of sheets, the quiet hum of the air conditioning, the gentle tap of Ruth's shoes on the carpet. Mari's phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She tried to ignore it, but a small smile crept across her face. After a few minutes, she snuck a quick glance at the screen. Ruth's keen eyes didn't miss a thing. Child, that phone's been lighting up your face more than Sunday morning worship. Something you want to share? Mari's cheeks warmed as she smoothed the already perfect bedspread. Remember that blog post I wrote? About Jonah's prayer over my uniform? Ruth spritzed glass cleaner on the mirror. The mustard stain story. That was some fine writing, baby girl. Well. Mari pulled out her phone, her hand slightly shaky. Someone important. Read it. Theo Park. Ruth's cleaning cloth froze mid-swipe. The billionaire? Tech company Theo Park? Mari nodded, showing Ruth the message thread. He said my words reminded him of his mother. And now, she swallowed hard. He wants to help. He's offering to create a scholarship fund for housekeepers' families. In honor of my blog. Ruth set down her cleaning supplies and pulled her reading glasses from her pocket. She studied the messages carefully, her expression thoughtful. What kind of help are we talking about here? Full college scholarships, job training programs. Mari's voice grew quiet. He wants me to come to a foundation luncheon next week, to discuss details. Ruth's weathered hands found her hips. And what does your gut tell you about this man's intentions? He seems. Mary searched for the right words. Genuine. Lonely maybe, like someone who recognizes what it means to work hard and still come up short. She showed Ruth more of their messages. Look how he talks about his mother, how she used to clean houses to put him through school. Ruth's expression softened as she read. Well, I'll give him this. Man knows how to string words together with respect. She handed the phone back to Mari. But remember what I always say, rich folks can warm the hands and still chill the heart? Mari finished with a small laugh. I know, Ruth. I'm being careful. Mommy! Jonah's voice carried from the hallway where he sat with his coloring books. He often joined them on school holidays, quietly entertaining himself while they worked. Can I hear the message again? Mari stepped into the doorway. Baby, you're supposed to be working on your homework. Please? His eyes sparkled with excitement. The one where he talks about helping kids like me? Mari glanced at Ruth, who nodded encouragingly. She pulled up the message and read it aloud. Your words reminded me of my mother's hands, how they always smelled like lemons and love. I want to create something lasting, a housekeeper's scholarship fund. Your blog could help so many families like yours. Would you consider meeting to discuss this? Jonah bounced in his seat. That means I could get special help with my speaking, like Dr. Chen said? Mari's heart squeezed. Speech therapy wasn't covered by her insurance, and the weekly sessions were far beyond her budget. Maybe, mi amor. We'll see. Ruth came up behind her, resting a warm hand on her shoulder. You know what I think? Sometimes the Lord works in mysterious ways. Maybe all those late nights writing your heart out were preparation for something bigger. Mari looked down at her phone, at the typed words that had somehow bridged the gap between her world and Theo Park's. Then we'll wear mittens, she said softly. Ruth raised an eyebrow. Come again? You said rich folks can chill the heart. Mari smiled. So we'll wear mittens, gratitude ones. Jonah tugged at her apron. Mommy, can I say thank you to Mr. Theo? Like how Pastor Henry says we should always say thank you for blessings? Mari hesitated, then nodded. She opened her phone's voice recorder and knelt beside her son. Go ahead, mi amor. Just like we practice with Dr. Chen. Jonah took a deep breath, his small face scrunched in concentration. Thank you, Mr. Thee. Oh, he said carefully, each word measured and brave. Mari's eyes welled up as she pressed stop. Ruth squeezed her shoulder again, and Mari could feel the older woman's quiet approval. With slightly trembling fingers, she attached the voice memo to a message and typed, From my son's heart to yours, we are grateful for your kindness. She pressed send before doubt could change her mind. Ruth picked up her cleaning supplies again. Come on now, these rooms won't polish themselves. But Mari? She waited until their eyes met. Sometimes the biggest blessings come wrapped in unexpected packages. Just keep your feet on the ground and your eyes on the Lord. Mari nodded, tucking her phone away. As she reached for her cleaning cart, she offered up a silent prayer. Not for wealth or ease, but for wisdom to navigate this unexpected turn in their story. Chapter 4. The Invitation. Chapter 3. Hope in the Inbox. Scene 2. The small apartment filled with the warm, homey smell of simmering beans and rice as Mari stirred the pot on the stove. Their tiny kitchen barely had room to turn around, but she'd made it cozy with a few touches, a cross-stitched prayer hanging on the wall, cheerful yellow curtains from the dollar store, and Jonah's artwork decorating the refrigerator. Jonah sat at their fold-out table, his homework spread before him, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. He kept glancing up at his mother with eager eyes. Mama, what should I wear to the fancy lunch? Mari added a pinch of salt to the beans, tasting carefully. Well, mijo, we still have a few days to decide. Let's finish your spelling first. But Jonah couldn't contain his excitement. He bounced in his chair, making it scrape against the linoleum floor. Can I wear my Sunday shoes? The ones Ms. Ruth helped shine? Mari's heart squeezed. Those shoes were still a bit too big. Ruth had found them at the church donation bin and insisted they'd grow into them. She turned from the stove to look at her son, taking in his hopeful expression. Those shoes would be perfect, baby. She smoothed his hair, dark and thick like her own. But remember what we talked about. It's just a simple lunch meeting. But it's at the tall building, the glass one. Jonah's eyes sparkled. Jimmy at school said his dad worked there once, and the elevators go, whoosh, so fast your ears pop. Mari couldn't help but laugh at his enthusiasm. She served their dinner, the steam rising in gentle curls. Eat your beans first, then we'll plan your outfit. A knock at the door made them both look up. Ruth's familiar pattern, 2 quick taps, then 3 slow ones. Come in, Ruth, Mari called out, already reaching for another bowl. Ruth entered, carrying a garment bag over her arm. Her silver hair was neat, as always, though her uniform showed signs of a long day. I thought you might need something for that fancy lunch. She laid the bag across the back of their worn couch. Oh, Ruth, you didn't have to. Mari started, but Ruth waved her off. Hush now. This dress has been sitting in my closet since Margaret's wedding. Navy blue's not my color anyway. Washes me out something fierce. She unzipped the bag to reveal a simple but elegant dress in deep navy. Mari touched the fabric reverently. It was the kind of dress she'd walk past in store windows, admiring but never daring to try on. It's beautiful. Mama's gonna look like a princess, Jonah declared through a mouthful of rice. Manners, mijo, Mari reminded him gently, but she was still staring at the dress. Ruth settled into their third kitchen chair, accepting the bowl of beans Mari offered. Her expression grew serious. Now listen here, both of you. I've worked in that hotel long enough to know how things go. Rich folks, they can be kind. But don't you forget they've got power we don't. Mari stirred her beans, not meeting Ruth's eyes. Theo, Mr. Park. He seems different. The scholarship idea. I'm not saying he isn't genuine, Ruth said carefully. Lord knows we could use more generous hearts in this world. But keep your eyes open, baby girl. Keep your feet on solid ground. Jonah looked between them, sensing the shift in mood. Is Mr. Theo bad? No, sweet boy, Ruth answered quickly. We just want your mama to be careful, that's all. After dinner, Ruth helped Mari try on the dress. It fit almost perfectly, needing just a slight take-in at the waist. Jonah clapped his hands in delight when his mother twirled for him. Like Cinderella, he exclaimed, then frowned slightly. But you're prettier, Mama. Later, after Ruth had gone home and Jonah was getting ready for bed, Mari stood in his small bedroom. She carefully laid out his best church shirt on the chair, the white one with only one small repair on the sleeve, along with his pressed khakis and those slightly too big Sunday shoes. The moonlight streamed through the window, casting a gentle glow over the modest ensemble. Mari touched each item softly, her heart full of hope and fear in equal measure. Lord, she whispered, her voice barely disturbing the quiet of the room, let this be safe. She stood there for a moment longer, adding silently to her prayer all the words she couldn't speak aloud. Her dreams for Jonah's future, her fears about trusting this unexpected kindness, her desperate hope that this chance wasn't too good to be true. Chapter 5. The Whisper. Chapter 5. The Whisper. Mari's hands smoothed Jonah's borrowed navy blazer as they stood before the gleaming glass doors of Park Technologies. The building stretched toward the sky like a crystal mountain, its windows reflecting the morning sun. Jonah clutched a wrinkled paper craft in one small fist while his other hand held tight to his mother's. Remember what we talked about, Maijo? Mari knelt to straighten his clip-on tie. Best behavior okay? Jonah nodded, his dark eyes wide as he took in the towering building. Yes, Mommy. Like at church. The security guard smiled warmly as they approached the desk. Mari's borrowed dress from Ruth felt stiff and foreign, but she stood tall, showing her invitation on her phone. The guard's kindness helped ease the trembling in her stomach. Mr. Park's foundation luncheon? 15th floor, he said, handing them visitor badges. The express elevator is right there. Inside the elevator, Mari watched the numbers climb. Jonah bounced on his toes, still clutching his craft project from Sunday school. The paper was worn from being carried everywhere the past few days. What's your craft about again, baby? Mari asked, trying to distract herself from her nerves. It's a secret, Jonah whispered, holding it closer. Pastor Henry helped me make it. The elevator doors opened to a vast room with floor-to-ceiling windows. A dozen round tables dotted the space, each set with gleaming silverware and fresh flowers. A small stage held a podium with microphones. Well-dressed people mingled, their quiet conversation echoing off the glass. Mari felt small in her borrowed dress, but she remembered Ruth's words that morning. Stand straight, baby girl. You got more dignity in your work-worn hands than most folks got in their whole bodies. A slim woman in a sharp suit approached them. Mrs. Alvarez? I'm Lisa, Mr. Park's assistant. We're so glad you could make it. Your table is right up front. As they followed Lisa, Mari noticed Theo Park standing near the stage, talking with a group of people. He looked different than his photos online, younger somehow, with gentle eyes behind his glasses. When he spotted them, he excused himself and walked over. Mari, he said warmly, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. And this must be Jonah? Jonah partially hid behind Mari's skirt, but his eyes stayed fixed on Theo. Something in the boy's expression made Mari's heart skip, a look of wonder and recognition she couldn't quite place. Say hello, mijo, Mari encouraged. Hello, Mr. Thee. Oh, Jonah managed, his stutter more pronounced with nervousness. Theo knelt down to Jonah's level, his expensive suit touching the carpet. I got your voice message, he said kindly. That was very brave of you to send it. A small smile broke across Jonah's face. He clutched his paper craft tighter. The luncheon began with everyone taking their seats. Mari noticed their table was closest to the stage where Theo would speak. The food arrived, fancy chicken she didn't recognize, and vegetables arranged like art. Jonah whispered questions about each new dish, and Mari answered as best she could. When Theo approached the podium, the room fell silent. The microphones hummed to life as he began speaking about the new scholarship program. Mari felt tears prick her eyes as he described how her blog post had moved him to action. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths, Theo was saying. And sometimes God puts people in our path at exactly the right moment. That's when Jonah slipped from his chair. Mari reached for him, but he was already toddling toward the stage, his craft project extended like an offering. The room watched in collective held breath as the little boy approached Theo. Theo paused his speech and knelt again, giving Jonah his full attention. The microphones picked up the soft rustle of his movement. "What do you have there?" Theo asked gently. Jonah's small voice carried clearly through the sound system as he whispered, "Mommy says you're my daddy." The silence that followed felt like glass shattering in slow motion. Mari's heart stopped. Phones appeared everywhere, recording. She saw the exact moment. Theo's eyes widened in shock, saw the ripple of gasps move through the crowd like a wave. The craft paper in Jonah's hand, the one he'd been carrying all week, fluttered to the floor. Mari could finally see what it was. A Sunday school project titled, "Find a Helper, Dad," with a carefully drawn picture of what looked like Theo, copied from his website photo. Someone's phone chimed with a notification. Then another, and another. Mari watched in horror as people began looking at their screens, the moment already spreading across social media like wildfire. Her borrowed dress felt too tight. The room spun slightly. Through the rushing in her ears she heard whispers starting, "Did you record that? Is it streaming? Oh my God, look at Twitter." Theo remained frozen, still kneeling before Jonah, his hand gentle on the boy's shoulder. His face held a mix of emotions Mari couldn't read. Their eyes met across the room, and in that moment she knew nothing would ever be the same. The phones kept chiming. The whispers grew. And Mari's stomach dropped as she watched her private world begin to crumble in real time, broadcast through the endless windows of social media for all the world to see. Chapter 6. Viral Storm. Chapter 5. The Whisper. Scene 2. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the hotel windows as Mari pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged the fresh towels, her mind still reeling from the events at the foundation luncheon. The usual chatter of her coworkers felt different now. Hushed, pointed, directed at her. 2 housekeepers passed by, their conversation dropping to whispers. One held up her phone, showing something to the other. Their eyes darted to Mari before quickly looking away. "Mari." Ruth's familiar voice came from behind. Her face was drawn with concern as she hurried over holding her phone. "Baby girl, you need to see this." The screen showed a garish headline from the Daily Buzz. "Billionaire buys love child?" Below it was a screenshot of Jonah whispering to Theo, the moment frozen in time. Mari's stomach clenched as she scanned the article's opening lines about suspicious timing and convenient charity. "I didn't." Mari's voice cracked. "Ruth, you know I would never." "Of course I know that." Ruth squeezed her arm. "But these vultures don't care about truth." Mari's phone buzzed in her pocket. Another message from Theo. She'd received dozens since leaving the luncheon, but hadn't been able to open any of them. The memory of his face when Jonah whispered those words was etched in her mind, the surprise, the softening of his features, and then the flash of panic as phones appeared everywhere. "Mrs. Alvarez?" A crisp voice cut through her thoughts. Mrs. Wentworth, the hotel's HR director, stood at the end of the hall. "A moment, please?" In the sterile HR office, Mrs. Wentworth's heels clicked against the tile as she paced. "We've received concerning reports about your conduct. The hotel's reputation is at stake." "My conduct?" Mari straightened in her chair. "I've never been anything but professional. This situation with Mr. Park raises questions about your judgment." Mrs. Wentworth's lips pressed into a thin line. "You'll be placed under review pending investigation." Across town at Park Technologies, Theo sat in his office, facing down CFO Claudia Reed. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed against his desk as she laid out printouts of social media reactions and stock projections. "The board is concerned, Theo." Claudia's voice was sharp as cut glass. "This scholarship program was risky enough. Now we have this spectacle." "It was an innocent child's comment," Theo said quietly. "Innocent?" Claudia laughed coldly. "The timing is suspicious at best. Right after you announce a major initiative?" She leaned forward. "You need to distance yourself. Immediately. Issue a statement denying any connection." Theo's phone lit up with another message, this one from his PR team, warning about mounting media interest. He thought of Mari's face as she'd hurried Jonah out of the luncheon, of the boy's confused tears. At Jonah's elementary school, the whispers had already started. During recess, a group of children huddled around a parent volunteer's phone, pointing and giggling. Jonah sat alone on a bench, his small shoulders hunched. "Hey, charity case," a older boy called out. "Is your mom really dating a billionaire?" Jonah's teacher intervened quickly, but the damage was done. In the school office, the PTA mothers gathered for their weekly meeting, phones out as they shared the latest updates. "I always thought something was off about her," one mother said, scrolling through Mari's blog. "All those poetic posts about struggle and dignity. Seems calculated now, doesn't it? Should we be concerned about safety?" Another mother lowered her voice. "I mean, if she's the type to exploit her child this way." The sun had set by the time Mari finally made it home. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing all day, messages from unknown numbers, social media notifications, news alerts. She'd had to pick Jonah up early from school after he got sick to his stomach from anxiety. Now he slept fitfully in his room, his precious craft project torn and crumpled in the trash. Mari sank onto their worn couch, the springs creaking beneath her. Her phone lit up again. Another message from Theo. "Mari, please let me help fix this. The PR team has a strategy." Another notification popped up, a local news site running the headline, "Park Technologies stock drops amid love child scandal." The phone slipped from Mari's trembling fingers as tears finally broke free. More notifications kept appearing, casting sharp blue light in the darkness of her living room. Each buzz felt like another crack in the fragile hope she'd allowed herself to feel just hours ago. Chapter 7. Lines in the Sand. Chapter 6. Viral Storm. Scene 2. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Theo Park's corner office, where raised voices bounced off the glass walls. Board members gestured animatedly, their reflections multiplying like angry ghosts against the windows. Theo sat quietly at the head of the conference table, his hands folded, watching the chaos unfold. The stock has already dropped 3 points. Bradley Morrison, the eldest board member, jabbed his finger at a graph on his tablet. His face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This is precisely why we advised against personal involvement in charity cases." "Personal involvement?" Claudia Reed's voice dripped with disdain. "That's putting it mildly. The internet thinks he's funding a secret love child." Theo's jaw tightened. He thought of Jonah's innocent face, the way the boy had looked up at him with such trust, the memory of his small voice through the microphone. "Mommy says you're my daddy," played on repeat in his mind. "We need damage control," another board member insisted. "Distance, clear denial, maybe even legal action if this woman doesn't." "Her name," Theo interrupted quietly, "is Marisol Alvarez." The room fell silent. "And she's done nothing wrong." Claudia leaned forward, her expression softening into something almost maternal. "Theo, I know you meant well, but this scholarship program was already pushing boundaries. Now this? The optics are terrible." "Optics?" Theo's voice remained level, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "A single mother works double shifts to support her son. She writes beautiful words about dignity and hope. And we're worried about optics?" "The investors," Bradley started. "Excuse me." Theo stood up abruptly. "I need to make a call." He strode out of the boardroom, leaving the protests behind. In his private office, he closed the door and pulled out his phone. He'd been trying to reach Mari all day, watching helplessly as the story spun out of control. His fingers hovered over her number for a moment before he pressed dial. The phone rang 4 times. He was about to hang up when her voice came through, tired but steady. "Mr. Park." "Mari." He closed his eyes. "I'm so sorry. This isn't what I wanted for you, or Jonah." A long pause followed. He could hear muffled sounds in the background, perhaps a TV or Jonah playing. "The hotel put me on review today," she finally said. "The other mothers at school are spreading rumors about safety concerns." Theo's free hand clenched into a fist. "I'll handle it. I can call the hotel directly, make a statement." "If you walk away now," Mari cut in, her voice catching slightly, "the damage is mine to carry. Mine and Jonah's." Another pause. "He threw away his craft project, said he doesn't want to make things worse for me." The weight of her words settled heavy in Theo's chest. He thought of his own mother, how she'd worked cleaning houses when he was young, the way some clients had treated her. "Tell me what you need, whatever it is." "I need to think," Mari said softly. "This isn't just about today. It's about tomorrow and next week, and what happens when the next viral moment hits." In the background, Theo heard another voice, Ruth's distinct tone, warm but firm. "Come sit, baby girl, let's pray about this." "I should go," Mari said. "Mari, wait." Theo pressed his forehead against the cool glass of his window. "I know what the world thinks this is. But your words, they woke something in me. Something I thought died with Sarah." His late wife's name felt strange on his tongue, speaking it aloud after so long. "I won't let them bury your voice in scandal." He heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then Ruth's voice again, closer now. "Mari, come on, tea's getting cold." "I need to go," Mari repeated, but her tone had softened slightly. "Ruth's right. I need to pray for discernment." After they hung up, Theo stood at his window for a long time, watching the city lights blink on one by one. In Mari's small apartment, Ruth poured 3 cups of chamomile tea. Jonah had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from the day's emotions. Mari sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open to her blog dashboard. The post about Jonah's mustard-stained uniform, the one that had started it all, glowed on the screen. "The Lord doesn't give us more than we can handle," Ruth said, settling into a chair with a quiet grunt. "But sometimes he sure does push the limits." Mari wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "I kept the blog anonymous to protect us. Now everyone knows. They're twisting everything I wrote, making it seem calculated." Ruth blew on her tea. "You know what my herald used to say? The truth ain't always pretty, but it stands up straight." She reached over and patted Mari's hand. "The question is, are you going to stand with it?" Mari clicked through her blog archives. Posts about midnight prayers over bills, about Jonah's stutter and his beautiful heart, about finding God's grace in hotel corners and laundry rooms. Real stories. True stories. "They'll say I'm after his money," she whispered. "They already are. Child, people been talking since Eve took that apple." Ruth's eyes crinkled with gentle humor. "But God knows your heart. And that man? He saw the truth in your words before he ever saw your face." Mari looked at her laptop screen, then at the crucifix hanging on her wall. She thought of Jonah's innocent question about helper dads, of Theo's genuine tears over her writing, of Ruth's steady presence through every storm. With steady hands, she opened a new blog post. The cursor blinked, waiting. "Time to pray," Ruth said softly. They joined hands over the steaming tea, heads bowed in the quiet kitchen. Ruth's strong voice carried the words, "Lord, grant our Mari wisdom. Show her the path through this valley, and remind her that your light shines brightest in the dark." When they finished, Mari opened her eyes. She looked at her laptop, decision crystallizing in her heart. She would not hide anymore. Chapter 8. The Leap. Chapter 8. Taking a Stand. Mari's fingers hovered over her laptop keyboard in the pre-dawn quiet of her small apartment. The screen's glow illuminated her face as she took a deep breath and began typing. My name is Marisol Alvarez. For 2 years, I've written this blog anonymously, sharing stories from the hotel laundry room. Today, that changes. Laundry doesn't lie. It tells the truth about who we are, what we value, and how we treat each other. She paused, glancing at Jonah sleeping peacefully on the worn couch beside her. His favorite dinosaur blanket was tucked under his chin. Yesterday, my 7-year-old son's innocent words went viral. Instead of hiding, I choose to stand in the light. I am a hotel housekeeper, a single mother, and the writer behind Quiet Homes, Loud Hearts. Every stain I've scrubbed, every uniform I've pressed, every prayer I've whispered over other people's belongings, they're all part of my truth. The words flowed easier now, like water breaking through a dam. To the women who work alongside me, who taught me to fold sheets with precision and dignity, your stories matter. To the guests who never see us, we see you. To my son, who prays over mustard stains and believes in helper dads, your pure heart makes this world better. Mari hit publish just as Jonah stirred. Mommy? He mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Is it school time? Almost, my amor. She kissed his forehead. But first, Mommy did something brave. Her phone buzzed. A text from Theo. I saw your post. Turn on the news. Mari flicked on their small TV. There was Theo, standing at a podium in front of his company's building. His usual crisp suit looked slightly rumpled, as if he'd been up all night too. Today, I'm announcing the launch of Clean Hands, Full Hearts, Theo said, his voice steady despite the camera flashes. This initiative will provide training, education, and support for hotel housekeepers and single parents across our city. And I'm honored to announce that Marisol Alvarez, whose words touch thousands through her blog, has agreed to co-chair this effort. Jonah's eyes went wide. Mommy, that's you on TV. Mari pulled him close, her heart racing as Theo continued. We're partnering with local veterans organizations to create job training programs. Every person who makes our beds, cleans our rooms, and cares for our spaces deserves dignity, fair wages, and a path forward. Her phone lit up with messages. Ruth first. Look at God work. Coming over now. Then her co-workers. Mari, you're amazing. Even Mrs. Wentworth from HR. Please come see me today. Jonah bounced on the couch. Can I tell my teacher? My mommy's famous. Mari laughed, tears in her eyes. I'm not famous, mi amor. I'm just being honest. Same thing, he declared with 7-year-old wisdom. Ruth arrived as Mari was fixing Jonah's breakfast. The older woman wrapped her in a fierce hug that smelled of fabric softener and church perfume. Child, you got more spine than half the deacons, Ruth said proudly. Now put some food in your stomach, we've got work to do. They drove to the church basement, where Pastor Henry had offered space for their first planning meeting. The familiar cinder block walls and metal folding chairs felt steadying after the morning's excitement. Ruth helped Mari set up a notebook and pens. You know what this means, don't you? She asked quietly. Standing in the light means everyone sees you, the good folks and the mean ones. Mari nodded, thinking of the tabloid headlines, the whispers, the judgment. But they were already talking. At least now they'll hear my voice too. That's right. Ruth's eyes crinkled. And what a voice it is. Theo arrived precisely at 9, carrying coffee for everyone. He looked more human away from the cameras, his tie loosened slightly. Mari, he said softly, thank you for trusting me with this. Thank you for making it bigger than just us, she replied. They spread papers across the folding tables, training proposals, budget drafts, letters of support from local businesses. Ruth contributed her decades of supervisory experience, marking up the documents with practical suggestions. See here, she pointed, we need childcare during the training sessions. Can't learn if you're worried about your babies. Theo nodded, making notes. We'll add it to the budget. What else? Transportation stipends, Mari suggested. Many women take 3 buses to reach work. The morning flew by as they planned. Pastor Henry brought down coffee and donuts, beaming at the sight of them working together. The Lord moves in mysterious ways, he said, squeezing Mari's shoulder. Around noon, Theo's phone buzzed. The board wants an emergency meeting, he sighed. But this comes first. We're doing what's right. Mari watched him leave, then turned to Ruth. Is this really happening? Ruth squeezed her hand firmly. Now the real fight begins. The middle. Chapter 9. Hands joined. Chapter 8. The Leap. Scene 2. The church basement hummed with activity that Saturday morning. Cardboard boxes lined the worn linoleum floors, and the smell of coffee drifted from the ancient percolator in the corner. Mari and Ruth worked side by side, their practiced hands sorting canned goods into neat rows while Pastor Henry directed new volunteers. "Green beans in Box A, folks," Pastor Henry called out, his gentle voice carrying across the room. "Fruit cocktail goes in Box B." Mari couldn't help but smile as Ruth hummed an old hymn, her weathered hands moving steadily. Jonah sat cross-legged nearby, carefully placing juice boxes into paper bags. His tongue poked out in concentration. The basement door creaked open, letting in a shaft of morning sunlight. Theo Park stood at the top of the stairs, looking almost uncertain in his plain white shirt and khakis. Gone was the crisp suit from his office tower. He held a cardboard tray of coffee cups from the diner down the street. The room grew quiet for a moment. Ruth raised an eyebrow but kept working. "I brought coffee," Theo said simply, descending the stairs. "And I'd like to help, if that's okay." Pastor Henry stepped forward, extending his hand. "We welcome all hands here, Mr. Park. Though I warn you, Ruth runs a tight ship with her sorting system." Ruth snorted. 20 years of laundry supervision teaches you a thing or two about organization." The tension eased as Theo set down the coffee and rolled up his sleeves. He moved to the pile of boxes Mari was assembling. "Where do you need me?" "These need to be taped up," Mari explained, demonstrating with the packing tape. "Just make sure they're sturdy." They worked in companionable silence for a while. Jonah wandered over to watch Theo tape boxes, fascinated by the rhythmic sound of the tape dispenser. "You're doing it wrong," Jonah said matter-of-factly. "Mommy says you gotta make an H with the tape so nothing falls out the bottom." Theo looked at the boy seriously. "An H pattern? I see. Would you show me?" As Jonah demonstrated the proper taping technique, an older man in a faded Marine's cap approached. "You Park's boy?" he asked gruffly. Theo straightened up. "Yes, sir. Theodore Park. Heard your father was a medic in Korea." The veteran studied him. "Tommy Park? You knew my father?" Something in Theo's carefully maintained composure shifted. "Served with him. Saved my life outside Busan." The veteran, his name tag read Frank, pulled up a folding chair. "Your old man had steady hands in a firefight." More veterans gathered as Frank shared stories about Tommy Park, the quiet medic who'd carry wounded men for miles, singing Korean lullabies to keep them conscious. Theo listened intently, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Dad never talked much about the war," Theo said softly. "He worked 2 jobs after, put me through school, died before." He swallowed hard. "Before I could really thank him." Ruth appeared with a fresh cup of coffee for Theo. "Sometimes the best thanks is living right by what they taught us," she said quietly. Mari watched as Theo helped an elderly woman sort through donations, handling each dented can with the same care he probably gave to million-dollar contracts. He laughed at Frank's war stories, rolled his eyes good-naturedly at Ruth's teasing, and never once checked his phone. The morning wore on. Children darted between the boxes, helping where they could. Pastor Henry's wife brought down homemade cookies. The basement filled with conversation and laughter. "Your daddy was a good man," Frank told Theo as they packed the last box. "Saw the best in people. Looks like that carried through." Theo's voice was rough. "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." Mari noticed how he'd stopped flinching at words like daddy and father. How naturally he fit into this basement full of ordinary people, despite his billions. As the volunteers began to clear out, Jonah climbed into Ruth's lap in her favorite corner chair. His eyes were heavy with the kind of tired that comes from doing good work. "Story, Miss Ruth?" he mumbled. Ruth settled him against her shoulder, smoothing his hair. "Once there was a little boy who helped pack food for hungry people," she began, her voice soft and melodious. "He worked so hard, showing grown-ups how to tape boxes just right." Mari watched her son drift off to sleep, safe in Ruth's embrace. Across the room, Theo was helping Pastor Henry stack the last boxes, talking quietly about expanding the pantry's reach. He moved with an ease she hadn't seen before, as if some invisible weight had lifted from his shoulders. She stepped closer to Ruth and sleeping Jonah. "Maybe this could work," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Ruth's eyes twinkled knowingly, but she just kept humming her hymn, rocking Jonah gently as the afternoon light filtered through the basement windows. Chapter 10. First Signs of Resistance. Chapter 9. Hands Joined, Scene 2. The autumn breeze rippled across the soccer field as Mari watched Jonah warm up with his teammates. His orange jersey fluttered like a bright flag against the gray sky. She pulled her cardigan tighter, settling onto the metal bleachers beside other parents who had gathered for Saturday morning practice. Theo arrived quietly, wearing jeans and a simple navy sweater. He carried 2 paper cups of coffee, offering one to Mari with a small smile. Some parents turned to stare, phones appearing in hands like sudden flowers. "Look who decided to grace us with his presence," Mrs. Wentworth's voice carried from 2 rows back. "I suppose when you're worth billions, you can buy your way onto any team." Mari's shoulders tensed, but she kept her eyes on Jonah. He was doing his best to keep up with the drills, his face scrunched in concentration as he dribbled the ball between orange cones. "He earned his spot fair and square," Mari said softly, more to herself than anyone else. She remembered the hours Jonah had spent practicing in their tiny backyard, using 2 milk crates as goalposts. The coach divided the kids into scrimmage teams. Jonah bounced on his toes, eager to play. When he was assigned as striker, a ripple of whispers spread through the bleachers. "Of course, the billionaire's pet kid gets to play striker," someone muttered. "Must be nice having connections." Theo's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, his eyes fixed on Jonah. Mari noticed how his hands gripped the coffee cup a little tighter, the paper crinkling under his fingers. The game began, and Jonah's determination showed in every step. He wasn't the fastest or most skilled player, but his enthusiasm was infectious. When he managed to get control of the ball, his face lit up with pure joy. "Go, Jonah!" Mari called out, clapping. A few other parents joined in, their children's natural competitiveness overshadowing adult prejudices. But then Jonah missed an easy shot, the ball rolling wide of the goal. Mrs. Wentworth seized the moment, leaning toward her friend. Her voice was low but deliberately loud enough to carry. "What do you expect from a—" The slur slipped from her lips like poison. Jonah froze mid-stride. The word hit him like a physical blow, his small shoulders crumpling. Tears welled in his eyes as he looked toward the bleachers, seeking his mother's face. Mari stood up so quickly her coffee spilled. Hot anger coursed through her veins, but before she could speak, Theo was already moving. He walked onto the field with measured steps, his presence drawing all eyes. The coach blew his whistle, calling a water break. Jonah stood rooted to the spot, wiping his eyes with his jersey sleeve. Theo knelt in front of him, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. His voice was gentle but clear enough to carry to the now silent bleachers. "Hey, buddy," Theo said, placing a steady hand on Jonah's shoulder. "You know what I see when I watch you play?" Jonah shook his head, hiccuping slightly. "I see determination. I see joy. I see a boy who loves this game so much that he practices in his backyard every chance he gets." Theo's words were measured, deliberate. Some people, when they feel small inside, try to make others feel small too. But we know better, don't we? Jonah nodded slowly, his breathing steadying. "We answer smallness with strength and kindness. That's what makes us bigger than their words. I'm here, Jonah. Your mom's here. We're proud of you. Not because of how many goals you score, but because of who you are." Mari had made her way onto the field, and now she stood beside them, her hand joining Theo's on Jonah's shoulder. The 3 of them formed a tableau that made several parents shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Should we show them how Alvarez's handle tough moments?" Mari asked, her voice warm and strong. A small smile tugged at Jonah's lips. "With prayer and pizza?" he asked, his stutter less pronounced than usual. "That's right, my-ho." Mari squeezed his shoulder. "Now, want to get back out there and play?" Jonah straightened up, squaring his small shoulders. He looked directly at Theo. "Will you watch me?" "Every minute." Theo promised. I wouldn't miss it for anything. As they returned to their seats, Mari noticed Mrs. Wentworth had gone oddly quiet, her face flushed. Several other parents were pointedly moving away from her, creating a bubble of isolation. The coach resumed the game, and this time when Jonah took position, there were more genuine cheers from the bleachers. The rest of practice passed without incident. Jonah played with renewed energy, and when he finally did score a goal, a wobbly but determined shot that just barely crossed the line, the celebration from his teammates was authentic and sweet. After practice, Mari drove home with Jonah in the back seat. Her hands still trembled slightly on the steering wheel, the morning's confrontation leaving her drained but oddly empowered. In the rearview mirror, she could see Jonah looking out the window, quietly humming the tune from Sunday school. His orange jersey was grass-stained and sweaty, but his face was peaceful. Chapter 11. HR and Hymns. Chapter 10. First Signs of Resistance. Scene 2. Mari's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her borrowed navy blazer, standing outside the hotel's third-floor conference room. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the hallway's patterned carpet. "Lord, give me strength," she whispered, echoing her morning prayer. Ruth appeared beside her, carrying a stack of handouts. "Remember, baby girl, you've lived what you're about to teach. That's worth more than any fancy degree." Inside, hotel supervisors filled the rows of chairs. Mari recognized Mrs. Wentworth from housekeeping management, her lips pressed into a thin line. Mr. Peterson from maintenance slouched in his seat, already looking bored. But there were friendly faces too. Carlos from the kitchen smiled encouragingly, and Sarah from front desk gave her a small wave. "Good morning," Mari began, her voice steadier than she expected. "I'm Mari Alvarez. Most of you know me as the housekeeper from the 7th floor. She paused, letting that sink in. "Today, I'm here to talk about dignity in the workplace." Ruth settled into a corner chair and began humming softly. Amazing Grace. The familiar melody wrapped around Mari like a warm blanket. "Dignity isn't just a word in an HR manual," Mari continued, clicking to her first slide. "It's remembering Maria in laundry has 3 grandchildren she's putting through college. It's knowing that James at the front desk is caring for his mother with Alzheimer's. It's understanding that every person who walks through these doors, guest or staff, carries their own story." Mrs. Wentworth's pen scratched loudly against her notepad. "And some stories get more attention than others, don't they?" she muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Mari took a deep breath. "You're right, Mrs. Wentworth. Some stories do get more attention. That's exactly why we're here, to make sure every story matters." She shared examples of microaggressions she'd witnessed. The supervisor who always scheduled the Spanish-speaking housekeepers for the messiest rooms, the way some guests refused to make eye contact with maintenance workers, the casual dismissal of accent-colored voices in meetings. "These aren't always intentional," Mari explained, "but they add up. They become the quiet messages that tell people they don't belong." Carlos raised his hand. "Just last week, a guest complained that my English wasn't professional enough for a sous chef. I've been here 15 years. Others began sharing similar experiences. Sarah described being mistaken for a housekeeper because of her hijab. Mr. Peterson, who had started the session looking disinterested, spoke about veterans struggling to find respect in civilian jobs. Ruth's humming shifted to "This Little Light of Mine," and Mari felt her confidence growing. "Small changes make big differences," Mari continued. "Learning names, making eye contact, listening to understand, not just to respond. These aren't extra tasks, they're the foundation of good business." Mrs. Wentworth's hand shot up. "This is all very touching, but we have efficiency metrics to meet. We can't spend all day holding hands and sharing feelings." Actually, Mari pulled up a chart. Hotels with higher employee satisfaction scores show better guest reviews and lower turnover. Dignity pays dividends. The room grew quiet as she shared statistics from other properties that had implemented similar training. Numbers didn't lie. Respect translated to revenue. As the session wrapped up, Ruth distributed feedback forms. Some supervisors lingered to talk, sharing their own stories or asking questions. Mrs. Wentworth left quickly, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Back in the employee break room, Mari's phone buzzed with an email notification from Theo. "Mari, heard about your training session. The hotel GM called. Said it was the most engaged he's seen his team in years. You have a gift for this work. Would love to discuss a larger role with the foundation when you have time. Proud of you." Ruth peered over her shoulder. "See? Truth has a way of making itself heard." She squeezed Mari's hand. "Now, let's get back to those 7th floor rooms. They won't clean themselves." Mari tucked her phone away, feeling a mix of hope and uncertainty. The morning's small victory felt like a step forward, but she knew the path ahead wouldn't be smooth. Still, with Ruth's hymns in her heart, and unexpected allies emerging, she felt ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 12. The Gala Night. Chapter 12. A Night of Light. Twinkling lights crisscrossed the church gymnasium's ceiling, transforming the usually plain space into something magical. The basketball hoops had been adorned with white fabric and fairy lights, while round tables dotted the floor, each covered in crisp white tablecloths and decorated with mason jars filled with wildflowers. Mari adjusted one of the centerpieces, breathing in the sweet scent of fresh daisies. All around her, volunteers hustled back and forth, carrying trays of donated desserts and setting up the podium for speeches. Ruth directed traffic from near the entrance, her voice carrying across the room with quiet authority. "Those cookies go on table 3, honey. And mind those streamers, they're not quite straight over there." The doors opened, and people began filtering in. Hotel housekeepers in their Sunday best, some with children in tow. Veterans in pressed shirts, some wearing their service pins. Local business owners and community members who'd supported the Clean Hands, Full Hearts initiative. Mari's heart warmed at the sight of them all mixing together, no barriers of class or status visible in their easy smiles and warm greetings. Jonah tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, can I sit with Miss Ruth?" "Of course, mi amor." Mari smoothed his carefully combed hair. "Just remember to use your indoor voice." The first veteran to speak was Mr. Chen, a Korean War veteran who now ran the corner grocery store. His voice was strong despite his age as he described how the initiative had helped his grandson secure an internship. "When you've seen war," he said, his eyes meeting Theo's across the room, "you know the value of building peace at home. This program, it gives people dignity. And dignity? That's worth fighting for." More testimonies followed. A young mother who'd received childcare assistance while training for hotel management. An older veteran who'd found purpose again teaching job skills to single parents. Each story built on the last, creating a tapestry of hope and connection that seemed to make the room glow brighter than the twinkling lights above. Mari watched from near the punch bowl, her chest tight with emotion. She caught sight of Theo standing at the back, his usual formal suit replaced by a simple button-down shirt and slacks. He looked different here, softer somehow, more human than the billionaire CEO the newspapers liked to photograph. He must have felt her gaze because he turned and walked toward her, something held behind his back. "Mari," he said softly, coming to stand beside her, "you've helped create something beautiful here." She shook her head. "We all did this together." Speaking of creating beautiful things, he brought his hands forward, revealing a leather portfolio. "I have something for you." Mari took it carefully, opening the cover to find official-looking paperwork inside. As she read, her eyes widened. "This is a book contract?" Theo nodded, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I sent your blog archives to a publisher friend. They want to publish Mustard Prayers as a full memoir. That's just the advance. They're very excited about working with you." Mari stared at the number on the page, her vision blurring with tears. It was enough to pay for Jonah's speech therapy for a year, with plenty left over for savings. "I can't accept," she started. "You earned this," Theo interrupted gently. "These are your words, your story. The publisher wants it because it's good, not because of me." From the small stage area, soft music began to play. Ruth had convinced some church members to form a small band, and they started with an old hymn made into a gentle waltz. Theo held out his hand. "Would you dance with me?" Mari hesitated for just a moment before placing her hand in his. His palm was warm and slightly rough, not the soft hands she'd expected from a CEO. He led her to the dance floor where other couples were already swaying. They moved slowly, careful to leave proper space between them, but Mari could feel the strength in his leading hand at her waist. Over his shoulder, she could see Jonah curled up on Ruth's lap, his eyes heavy with sleep despite his earlier excitement. "Look at them all," Theo murmured, nodding toward the crowd. Church ladies chatted with hotel maids. A veteran taught a young boy how to properly fold a napkin. Mrs. Wentworth, who'd been so cold at the soccer field, was actually laughing at something Ruth had said. "They just needed a chance to see each other," Mari replied, "to really see each other." The lights twinkled overhead like stars, casting soft shadows that danced across faces filled with joy. Mari felt something settle in her chest, a quiet certainty that this was right, all of it. The blog that had started as whispered prayers in a laundry room had grown into something bigger than herself, something that could help heal the invisible wounds that divided their community. Jonah had fully dozed off now, his head resting trustingly against Ruth's shoulder. The sight made Mari's heart swell even further. All around them, people smiled and talked, shared food and stories, connected in ways that transcended their usual social boundaries. She looked up at Theo and found him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. Something warm and sure, like he'd found an answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking. The music played on, soft and sweet, as they swayed beneath the twinkling lights, surrounded by the community they'd helped bring together. Chapter 13. Edited Lies. Chapter 13. The Fall. Sunlight streamed through Mari's small kitchen window as she sipped her coffee, still riding high from last night's gala. Her phone buzzed with notifications, dozens of positive comments about the Clean Hands, Full Hearts initiative. The corners of her mouth lifted as she scrolled through message after message of support. "Look at this one, Jonah," Mari said, turning her phone to show her son, who was munching on cereal at their tiny kitchen table. "Your story gives me hope," they wrote. Jonah grinned, milk dripping down his chin. He wore his favorite Spider-Man pajamas, his dark curls still messy from sleep. "Can I wear my new shoes to school today?" he asked, referring to the pair Theo had given him last week. "Of course, mi amor." Mari reached over to wipe his face with a napkin. The morning felt peaceful, wrapped in the warmth of yesterday's success. Her phone pinged with a new notification. Mari's heart skipped when she saw Tessa Klein's blog name flash across the screen. The tabloid blogger had posted a new video titled, "Exposed: The Truth Behind the Billionaire's Love Child Scandal." Mari's hands trembled as she pressed play. The footage showed snippets from the foundation luncheon, but something was wrong. The video had been edited to make it appear as if Mari was mouthing words to Jonah before he approached Theo. A sinister narrative overlay suggested she had coached her son to create a viral moment. "Mommy?" Jonah's voice seemed far away. "Why are you crying?" Mari quickly wiped her eyes. "It's nothing, baby. Finish your breakfast." But it wasn't nothing. Within minutes, her phone exploded with notifications. The hashtag #GoldDiggerMom was trending. Former supporters began questioning her motives. The comment section under her blog filled with vicious accusations. A knock at the door made her jump. Two women in professional attire stood in the hallway, their faces stern. "Ms. Alvarez? I'm Sandra Wheeler, from Child Protective Services. We've received some concerning reports about your son's welfare." Mari's chest tightened. "What? There must be some mistake. May we come in?" The second woman already had a notepad out. Mari stepped aside, her mind racing. The apartment suddenly seemed too small, too cluttered. She was acutely aware of the worn furniture, the patches on Jonah's backpack by the door. "Jonah, honey, can you go play in your room for a minute?" Mari managed to keep her voice steady. The CPS workers spent an hour examining their home, asking pointed questions about Mari's relationship with Theo, her employment, Jonah's care arrangements. They took notes about everything: the contents of the refrigerator, Jonah's bedroom, even Mari's work schedule. Just as they were leaving, Mari's phone rang. The hotel's HR manager's voice was cold and professional. "Ms. Alvarez, we need to discuss the termination of your employment, effective immediately." "What? On what grounds?" Mari's voice cracked. "Dishonesty and conduct unbecoming of our standards. The recent media attention has brought negative publicity to our establishment." The call ended. Mari stood in her living room, the morning sun now feeling harsh and exposing. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications, each one a new wound. Jonah crept out of his room, his lower lip trembling. "Mommy, the kids at school showed me the video. They said mean things." Mari pulled him close, feeling his small body shake with sobs. His words broke her heart. "Did I do bad? Should I not have talked to Mr. Theo?" "No, mi amor, no." Mari held him tighter, her own tears falling into his curls. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing at all." She wanted to call Theo, to ask for help, but doubt crept in. Was this what Ruth had warned her about? Had she been naive to trust a billionaire's attention? The thought made her stomach churn. Through the window, she spotted a news van pulling up outside their building. Reporters were already gathering, cameras ready. Mari quickly pulled the curtains closed, creating a barrier between their private pain and the public's hungry gaze. Jonah clung to her, his tears soaking into her shirt. "Are we in trouble?" Mari stroked his hair, trying to find words to explain something she herself didn't understand. The morning that had started so hopefully now felt like a nightmare. Their small apartment, once a haven, felt like it was closing in around them. Her phone buzzed again, Ruth calling. Mari let it go to voicemail. She needed a moment to breathe, to think, to hold her son and remind herself that their truth was stronger than any edited video. But as Jonah's tears continued to fall, as the murmur of reporters grew outside, as her phone filled with more hateful messages, Mari wondered if their truth would be enough to weather this storm. "I love you, Jonah," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We're going to be okay." But even as she spoke the words, she wasn't sure how to make them true. The security they'd built over the past few weeks lay shattered around them, leaving mother and son clinging to each other in the growing chaos of their small living room. Chapter 14. The Boardroom Betrayal. Chapter 13. Edited Lies. Scene 2. The glass doors of Park Technologies shuddered as Theo stormed through them, his normally composed demeanor cracking under pressure. The morning sun cast harsh shadows across the sleek office walls, matching his dark mood. Administrative assistants scurried out of his path, their worried glances following him down the corridor. "Sir, the board is already assembled," his assistant called out, hurrying behind him with a tablet. Ms. Reed insisted on starting immediately. Theo's jaw clenched. Without breaking stride, he pushed through the boardroom doors. 12 faces turned to stare at him, with Claudia Reed standing at the head of the table, her perfectly manicured fingers splayed across a stack of documents. "How kind of you to join us, Theodore," Claudia said, her voice sharp as ice. The large screen behind her displayed a plummeting stock chart. "I trust you've seen the morning numbers?" "Cut to the chase, Claudia," Theo said, remaining standing. "Why the emergency meeting?" Claudia's lips curved into a cold smile. She clicked her remote, and the screen changed to show social media posts, news headlines, and financial projections. "Your little charity project has become a liability. The markets are responding to your personal entanglements." "They're responding to manufactured controversy," Theo countered, his hands gripping the back of his chair. "The Foundation's work is solid." "Solid?" Claudia laughed, the sound brittle. "Let's review the facts. You've diverted significant resources to an unproven initiative. You've associated our brand with a scandal. And now?" She gestured to the screen. "Investors are fleeing." Board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Mr. Wenhever, Chen, one of the longest-serving members, cleared his throat. "The numbers are concerning, Theo. We're looking at a 15% drop since opening." "Short-term volatility," Theo insisted. "The Foundation's work will what?" Claudia cut in. "Save the world one housekeeper at a time? This isn't about charity anymore. It's about protecting thousands of jobs, millions in shareholder value." She circled the table like a shark. "Your judgment is compromised." Theo felt the weight of every stare, every whispered doubt. The empire he'd built over decades seemed to tremble beneath his feet. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably another message from Mari, but he couldn't look now. Not here. "I move for an immediate vote," Claudia announced. "To temporarily suspend Theodore Park's executive authority, pending a full review." She placed a document in front of each board member. "For the good of the company." Theo's throat tightened. "You can't." "We can and we must," Claudia interrupted. "Your reckless philanthropy threatens everything we've built. This woman, this child, they've become an obsession. Where's the ruthless innovator who built Park Technologies from nothing?" The words hit like physical blows. Theo saw doubt creeping into the faces around him, saw years of trust eroding in real time. His phone buzzed again, more insistent this time. "The vote will proceed," Claudia declared. "All in favor." Theo's phone rang, Mari's name flashing on the screen. The boardroom fell silent, all eyes on him. With trembling fingers, he declined the call. "As I was saying," Claudia continued, triumph glinting in her eyes. "All in favor of suspending." His phone rang again, and again. The third time, a text appeared. "Please, Jonah's crying. I need to know if any of this was real." Theo's chest constricted. The boardroom swam before his eyes. The charts, the faces, the empire he'd sacrificed everything to build. His wife's voice echoed in his memory. "Success without love is just elegant emptiness." The phone rang one final time. Mari's voice, when he finally answered, was thick with tears. "Were we just charity to you? Something broken for you to fix?" Theo opened his mouth, but no words came. The weight of the boardroom pressed down on him like a physical force. Claudia's sharp smile, the hovering vote, the years of power and control, all of it trapped his voice in his throat. In his silence, he heard Mari's sharp intake of breath, a small, wounded sound that cut deeper than any corporate betrayal. The line went dead, leaving him standing in a room full of everything he'd ever wanted, feeling suddenly empty. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, papers shuffled. And somewhere in the city, a little boy was crying, waiting for an answer that hadn't come. "Shall we proceed with the vote?" Claudia's voice sliced through the silence, precise as a surgeon's blade. Theo stared at his phone, at Mari's name fading from the screen, and felt the full cost of his silence crushing down on his shoulders. Chapter 15. Dark Night of the Soul. Chapter 14. The Boardroom Betrayal. Scene 2. The kitchen's fluorescent light cast a harsh glow over Mari's small apartment. Empty coffee mugs and scattered papers covered the wooden table where she sat, her shoulders heavy with exhaustion. Through the thin walls a neighbor's TV droned, but Mari barely noticed it. Her fingers traced the edge of her phone, which had been silent for hours now, no word from Theo. Ruth's weathered hand smoothed over the triangle of blue fabric she'd brought with her. The folded American flag held such weight, such history. Mari watched as Ruth placed it carefully on the table between them, right next to a plate of untouched cornbread. "My James," Ruth said softly, touching the flag's edge. "He knew about standing tall when the world wants you to shrink." Her voice carried the warmth of decades of memories. 3 tours in Vietnam, and he never lost his dignity. Not once. Mari nodded, her throat tight. "I keep thinking about Jonah. How do I protect him from all this?" From down the hall came the soft sounds of Jonah in his room. The boy had been unusually quiet since dinner, when Mari had tried to explain why they couldn't go to the park tomorrow. Too many cameras, too many whispers. Ruth's chair creaked as she leaned forward. "Baby girl, sometimes protecting means showing them how to face the storm." A muffled sniffle from Jonah's room caught their attention. Mari started to rise, but Ruth touched her arm, nodding toward the hallway. Together they walked quietly to Jonah's door, left slightly ajar. Inside, Jonah sat cross-legged on his bed, Mari's old iPad in his lap. His small fingers moved deliberately across the screen, his face scrunched in concentration and wet with tears. "Delete," he whispered to himself, tapping again and again. "Delete. Delete." Mari's heart clenched as she realized what he was doing, erasing all his precious videos. The silly dancing clips, the bedtime stories, the speech therapy, progress he'd been so proud of sharing with Theo. "Baby, what are you doing?" Mari pushed the door open wider. Jonah jumped, nearly dropping the iPad. I'm fixing it," he stuttered, his lower lip trembling. "If I delete everything, maybe the mean ladies will stop being mad at you. Maybe Mr. Theo will come back." Mari crossed the room in 3 steps, gathering her son into her arms. The iPad slid onto the Batman bedspread as Jonah buried his face in her shoulder, his small body shaking with sobs. "Oh, my sweet boy," Mari whispered into his hair. "None of this is your fault. Not one bit of it." Ruth moved to sit on the edge of the bed, her hand coming to rest on Jonah's back. "Child, those videos are your treasures. Your story. Don't you let anyone make you feel like hiding them away?" Jonah hiccuped, turning his tear-stained face toward Ruth. "But everybody's fighting cause of what I said. I heard Mrs. Martinez next door telling her husband about Mommy losing her job. And today at school, Tommy said his mom won't let him play with me anymore." Mari closed her eyes against her own tears, rocking Jonah gently. The weight of adult consequences on such small shoulders, it wasn't right. Ruth stood suddenly, her movement purposeful. "Come on, both of you. Right now." She led them back to the kitchen, where her husband's flag still lay on the table. The old woman's spine straightened as she placed one hand on the carefully folded fabric. "Mari, bring that chair closer. Jonah, sit with your mama." They did as she asked, Jonah curling into Mari's lap like he used to when he was smaller. Ruth remained standing, her presence filling the tiny kitchen with unexpected strength. "Lord," Ruth began, her voice clear and steady, "we come before you tonight with heavy hearts but unbroken spirits." She kept one hand on the flag, raising the other toward Mari and Jonah. "These children of yours are facing giants, Lord, teaching them to stand tall like David did." Jonah's small hand found Mari's, squeezing tight. "We pray for strength that doesn't come from money or power, but from knowing whose we are. We pray for wisdom to see past the hurt to the healing. And Lord," Ruth's voice grew fiercer, "we pray for justice that rolls down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream." Mari felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but they weren't tears of defeat anymore. Ruth's words wrapped around them like armor, like love. "Teach these children of yours to stand, Father, to stand in truth, to stand in faith, to stand in the knowledge that you see them and know their worth, no matter what tomorrow brings." "Amen," Jonah whispered, his voice small but steady. Ruth opened her eyes, looking at them both with fierce tenderness. "James used to say dignity isn't about never falling, it's about how you carry yourself on the way down, and how you get back up again." Mari pulled Jonah closer, breathing in the familiar scent of his strawberry shampoo. The kitchen clock ticked steadily in the quiet, marking time in this moment between standing and falling. "If we fall," Mari whispered, more to herself than anyone, "let us fall with dignity." Chapter 16. The Breakthrough. Chapter 16. Truth Revealed. Marcus Brown hunched over his mop in the gleaming lobby of Park Technologies, his movements slow and deliberate as executives rushed past in their expensive suits. His phone weighed heavy in his pocket, not just any phone, but the one connected to the building's security system. He'd almost deleted yesterday's footage to make space, but something had made him pause. The night shift janitor glanced at his watch. 6:45 a.m. Most of the bigwigs wouldn't arrive for another hour. Finding a quiet corner behind a massive potted plant, he pulled out his phone and opened the security app. Come on," he muttered, scrolling through timestamps until he found it, the foundation luncheon. His weathered finger pressed play. The footage was crystal clear. Little Jonah Alvarez, in his Sunday best, wandered away from his mother while she talked to a donor. The boy clutched something in his pocket, a paper craft of some kind. No one prompted him. No one whispered in his ear. He simply walked straight up to Theo Park and tugged on his sleeve. Marcus's hands shook. He'd seen that tabloid story, heard the cruel whispers about Mari coaching her son. But here was the truth, plain as day, a child's innocent action, caught on camera. He found Pastor Henry's number in his contacts. The pastor had helped Marcus's family when they'd fallen on hard times last winter. "Pastor, you need to see this, now," An hour later, Pastor Henry sat in his study, surrounded by a group of veterans who'd gathered for their weekly breakfast meeting. The security footage played on his laptop screen. "Well, I'll be damned," whispered Joe Martinez, a former Marine who'd served 2 tours. "That boy went to him all on his own." "Language, Joe," Pastor Henry reminded gently, but his eyes were fixed on the screen. "This changes everything." Frank Chen, who'd lost a leg in Desert Storm, leaned forward in his wheelchair. "Those vultures tried to destroy a mother's reputation. And for what? Because she dared to accept help? Because she inspired people? We can't let this stand," said Sarah Williams, retired Air Force. Her silver hair caught the morning light as she shook her head. "We're veterans. We know about honor." Pastor Henry opened a fresh document on his computer. The veterans gathered closer as his fingers began to type. "An open letter to our community. We write today as veterans who have served this nation, as people of faith who believe in truth, and as members of a community that must choose between fear and courage. We have witnessed the character assassination of Mari Alvarez, a hard-working mother whose only crime was sharing her story of hope. We have seen attempts to shame Theo Park for showing compassion instead of cold corporate calculation. Today, we have viewed security footage that proves what we already knew in our hearts. There was no manipulation, no coaching, no scandal. There was only a child, moved by his own heart, speaking his truth. In combat, we learned that courage isn't about being fearless, it's about standing firm when fear would be easier. We learned that honor isn't selective. It applies to how we treat everyone, regardless of rank or status. Mari Alvarez has shown that courage. Theo Park has demonstrated that honor. To those who would tear down good people for headlines or profit, we stand united against you. To those who whisper about knowing your place, we reject that kind of thinking. It has no place in the community we serve to protect. We call on all people of conscience to stand with Mari and Theo, to support clean hands, full hearts, and to remember that dignity is not earned by wealth or status. It is the birthright of every human being. Signed, the Veterans of Hope Community Church. One by one, the veterans added their names and service branches. Pastor Henry's printer hummed as copies emerged. Sarah picked up her phone. "I'm calling every veteran I know. This goes out today." Frank was already texting his contacts at the local news station. "They'll want to see that footage." Joe gripped his coffee mug tightly. "Remember what Mari said in that blog post about mustard stains? How you can't hide the truth forever? Well, here's our proof." Pastor Henry watched his screen as more signatures rolled in through email. Veterans from across the city were responding, adding their names, sharing their own stories of times when compassion crossed social boundaries. In his penthouse office, Theo Park sat alone, staring at his laptop screen. The open letter filled his display, accompanied by the security footage that Marcus had released. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, untouched as he read and reread the veteran's words. The corporate boardroom buzzed with activity down the hall. He could hear Claudia's voice, sharp with authority, preparing for the vote to remove him. Investor calls waited. PR teams had drafted statements distancing him from Mari and Jonah. Theo reached out and slowly closed his laptop. "The board can have the company," he said quietly to the empty room. "I choose them." The words hung in the air, simple but profound. For the first time in weeks, his shoulders felt lighter. The path ahead was clear, not easier, but right. The end. Chapter 17. Walking Out. Chapter 16. The Breakthrough. Scene 2. The Park Technologies boardroom buzzed with tension. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table where board members sat in their pressed suits and pearls. Theo straightened his tie, feeling the weight of the resignation letter in his breast pocket. Claudia stood at the head of the table, laser pointer in hand, projecting graphs that showed plummeting stock prices. Her voice carried sharp disapproval. "The public relations nightmare has cost us 3 major contracts. Our Asian markets are particularly sensitive to this. Scandal." Board members nodded, some taking careful notes, others shooting concerned glances at Theo. He noticed how Mr. Henderson, who'd been with the company since its early days, couldn't quite meet his eyes. Furthermore, Claudia continued, clicking to the next slide, our institutional investors are threatening to pull out unless we take decisive action to distance ourselves from this situation. She emphasized the last word like it was something distasteful. Theo's phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from Marcus, the night janitor. Got the footage, boss. Clear as day. The kid came to you. A warm certainty settled in his chest. He thought of Jonah's small face, of Mari's tired eyes, of Ruth's knowing glance. The choice wasn't hard anymore. I have something to say, Theo said quietly, but his voice carried authority that made everyone stop. He stood, reached into his jacket, and pulled out the cream-colored envelope. What's this? Claudia asked, her perfectly manicured hand reaching for it. My resignation as CEO, effective immediately. The words fell like stones in still water. Gasps echoed around the table. Theodore, be reasonable, Mr. Henderson sputtered, finally finding his voice. The company needs stability, yes. Theo's calm voice cut through the growing murmurs. It needs someone who will focus solely on quarterly reports and market expectations. That's not me, not anymore. He looked each board member in the eye, one by one. These people who'd helped build his dream, who'd celebrated every milestone. A company can replace me. That boy needs an adult. Claudia's face flushed red. This is absolutely unprecedented. You can't just... I can and I am. Theo's voice remained steady. My shares will be placed in a blind trust. I'll retain no operational control. The foundation work will be my sole focus moving forward. He gathered his tablet and stood. Through the glass walls, he could see junior staff members gathering, phones in hand. Word traveled fast in tech companies. Theodore Park, Claudia called after him, her voice sharp with disbelief. If you walk out that door, there's no coming back. Theo paused at the doorway, a small smile playing at his lips. I know, that's the point. As he walked through the open office space, past rows of desks and startled faces, something unexpected happened. It started with one young programmer standing up, then another and another. Soon, the whole floor was applauding. Some were filming on their phones, others wiping tears. Sarah from marketing called out, We're with you, Mr. Park! Give them hell, boss! Shouted Dave from engineering. Theo felt his throat tighten. These were the people who'd believed in his vision of technology serving humanity. They understood. He took the private elevator to the parking garage, loosening his tie as he descended. His Tesla waited in its reserved spot, but he barely noticed the luxury anymore. All he could think about was getting to Mari's apartment, showing her the security footage, making things right. The garage attendant, an elderly man named Joe, gave him a knowing smile. Sometimes the best path ain't the easy one, Mr. Park. Theo nodded, sliding behind the wheel. The engine hummed to life silently. On his dashboard, the GPS already had Mari's address programmed in. He'd memorized it weeks ago but never had the courage to visit. As he pulled out into the morning traffic, his phone buzzed again. A text from Ruth. She's home. Fix this. The city streets blurred past as Theo drove toward the modest apartment complex where Mari and Jonah lived. His heart beat faster with each mile. But for the first time in weeks, he felt completely certain about his path forward. He parked next to Mari's old Honda, its paint faded by years of sun. The contrast between their vehicles couldn't have been more stark, but none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was upstairs, in apartment 3B, where a little boy needed someone to stand up for him and a strong woman needed to know she wasn't alone. Theo grabbed his tablet, which contained Marcus's security footage, and stepped out of the car. The morning sun felt warm on his face, like a blessing. He straightened his shoulders and walked toward the building's entrance, leaving behind the weight of corporate expectations with each step. At the security door, he pressed 3B and waited, his heart thundering in his chest. This was no longer the polished CEO of Park Technologies. This was just a man, trying to do right by the people who'd awakened his heart. Chapter 18. The Town Hall. Chapter 17. Walking Out. Scene 2. The wooden pews of Grace Community Church creaked under the weight of a standing-room-only crowd. Paper fans fluttered in the stuffy evening air, and the stained-glass windows glowed amber with the setting sun. Outside, news vans lined the quiet suburban street, their satellite dishes reaching into the darkening sky. Mari sat in the front row, smoothing her borrowed navy dress, the same one she'd worn to that fateful foundation luncheon. Jonah fidgeted beside her in his Sunday best, his small hand wrapped tightly around Ruth's weathered fingers. The old deaconess hummed softly, a familiar hymn that settled like a warm blanket over Mari's nervous heart. Pastor Henry stepped up to the podium, his kind face serious beneath salt and pepper hair. "We gather tonight," he began, "not as spectators to scandal, but as witnesses to truth." His voice carried to the rafters. "In this house, we believe in second chances and honest hearts." Theo Park rose from his seat, tall and solemn, in a simple gray suit. Gone was the corporate armor he'd worn like a shield. His steps echoed as he approached the podium, and Mari noticed his hands trembling slightly as he gripped its edges. "I owe many people an apology," Theo began, his voice rough with emotion. "But most of all, I owe one to Mari and Jonah Alvarez." He turned to face them directly. "When that beautiful moment happened, when Jonah spoke from his pure heart, I let fear dictate my response. I forgot what my mother taught me about courage and dignity." A tissue box made its way down the pews as Theo continued. "I was so afraid of losing control, of what the board would say, that I forgot what matters most. My silence hurt you, Mari, and for that, I am deeply sorry." Mari felt Ruth squeeze her hand as Theo went on. "But you know what? Walking away from that boardroom was the easiest decision I've ever made, because some things are worth more than stock prices and quarterly reports. Some things are priceless." Jonah squirmed in his seat, and Mari pulled him close, breathing in the baby shampoo scent of his hair. Pastor Henry nodded to her. It was her turn. Mari stood, her blog post clutched in slightly shaking hands. The paper crinkled as she unfolded it, and the microphone picked up her deep breath. "I wrote this post called Laundry Doesn't Lie, because in my world, stains tell stories. They tell the truth." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "Every mustard splash, every coffee drip, every grass stain on tiny knees, they're proof of life being lived, of dignity in honest work, of children being children." She looked at Jonah, who beamed back at her. "You can't edit a real stain. You can't fake authenticity." The crowd murmured in agreement as Mari continued. "When that video was edited to make me look like I'd coached my son, it hurt. But you know what? Laundry doesn't lie, and neither does my boy." She touched the silver cross at her neck. "Neither does love." From the back of the church came Ms. Martinez, the CPS worker who'd investigated their case. She made her way forward, official papers in hand. "Mrs. Alvarez," she announced clearly, "our investigation is closed. We found zero evidence of exploitation or coaching. You are, as we've observed, an exemplary mother." Applause erupted, and Jonah jumped up and down, his small voice carrying, "That means we won, Mommy." The laughter that followed broke the tension like sunshine through storm clouds. Even Mrs. Wentworth, sitting stiffly in her pearls near the back, dabbed at her eyes. Mr. Davidson, the hotel manager, stood next. "Mari, we were wrong. We acted hastily, and we'd like to offer you your job back with a promotion to supervisor." Mari felt Ruth's hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. She took another deep breath. "Thank you, Mr. Davidson, but no thank you." She straightened her spine. "My place isn't pushing someone else's cart anymore. It's time for something new." The crowd stirred, and Mari saw several of her former coworkers nodding, pride in their eyes. These were women who'd covered her shifts when Jonah was sick, who'd shared their lunch breaks and their dreams. "Ruth?" Mari turned to her mentor, her voice thick with emotion. "You always said God doesn't waste pain, that everything can be turned into purpose." She paused, gathering strength. "Well, I think I've found mine." Ruth's eyes sparkled with tears and triumph. She leaned close and whispered, just loud enough for Mari to hear, "Time to lead, baby girl." The evening sun had fully set now, painting the stained glass in deep purples and blues. Outside, camera flashes still lit up the church steps like lightning bugs. But inside these walls, something pure and true had taken root, something that no edited video could touch, no tabloid could tarnish. Chapter 19. Jonah's Truth. Chapter 18. The Town Hall, Scene 2. Pastor Henry stepped to the worn wooden podium, his gentle voice carrying through the packed church hall. "Now, there's someone else who'd like to speak." He gestured toward Jonah, who clutched his craft project tight against his chest. "Come on up, son." Mari squeezed her boy's shoulder. "You can do it, mi amor." Jonah's small sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as he made his way forward. Ruth dabbed her eyes with a tissue, and even the usually stern Mrs. Wentworth leaned forward in her pew, her expression softening. The craft project trembled in Jonah's hands, a simple piece of construction paper decorated with crayon drawings and magazine cutouts. He looked so tiny standing there, his striped bow tie slightly crooked, his dark eyes wide with nervousness. I made this in Sunday school," Jonah began, his stutter more pronounced under the pressure. But nobody rushed him. Pastor Henry stood nearby, nodding encouragement, as Jonah took a deep breath. Pastor Henry told us about how God is our Father in heaven." Jonah held up his craft project higher. "He said sometimes God sends helper, dads too, like Joseph helped take care of baby Jesus." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mari noticed Theo shift in his seat, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "We had to make a project about finding a helper, Dad," Jonah continued, his voice growing steadier. "Someone who shows God's love." He pointed to the pictures he'd carefully cut out, images of men helping children, teaching, sharing meals. "When Mr. Theo wrote to my mommy, he was kind like that." Jonah's finger traced one of his crayon drawings. "He didn't know us, but he wanted to help, like the Good Samaritan story." Mrs. Wentworth's hand went to her throat, her earlier criticism forgotten. Several of the PTA moms who'd spread rumors were now wiping their eyes. "I kept the project in my pocket at the lunch meeting 'cause," Jonah's voice got smaller, "'cause I wanted to show him. I didn't mean to make trouble with the microphone. I just wanted to say thank you." Ruth's quiet of approval echoed in the hushed church. A veteran in his service cap nodded vigorously, tears tracking down his weathered cheeks. "My mommy didn't tell me to say anything," Jonah said firmly, his chin lifting. "She tells me to always tell the truth. And the truth is," he looked straight at Theo, "you act like a helper, Dad. You listen when I talk about soccer. You tie my shoes when they come loose. You don't mind my stutter." Mari watched as Theo's carefully maintained composure cracked. His shoulders trembled slightly, and he pressed his fingers against his eyes. "Pastor Henry says God puts people in our path for a reason." Jonah held his craft project against his heart. "Even if some people got mad about it, I'm glad God put Mr. Theo in our path." The silence in the church was profound. Then Ruth started clapping, her strong hands creating a rhythm that others quickly joined. The applause swelled, filling the sacred space with something that felt like grace. Jonah ducked his head, suddenly shy again. "That's all," he whispered into the microphone. Mari opened her arms, and Jonah ran to her, burying his face in her neck. She held him close, feeling his small heart racing against her chest. When she looked up, she saw Theo watching them, his eyes brimming with tears he didn't try to hide. The last rays of sunset streamed through the stained glass, painting everyone in soft colors of gold and rose. In that moment, there were no billionaires or maids, no scandals or social divides. There was just a little boy's honest heart, showing them all a better way. Chapter 20. Healing the Rift. Chapter 19. Jonah's Truth. Scene 2. The morning sun cast long shadows across Mari's apartment building, stoop as she sat with a steaming cup of coffee warming her hands. Theo settled beside her, careful to leave respectful space between them. His usual crisp suit was replaced by a simple gray sweater and jeans, a visible sign of his step away from corporate life. Mari watched the steam rise from her cup, remembering countless mornings just like this one, except she'd been alone then. The concrete steps felt different with someone else sharing them. "Jonah's still sleeping," she said softly. "Yesterday took a lot out of him." Theo nodded, his own coffee untouched. "He was so brave, braver than I've been." A delivery truck rumbled past, and Mrs. Chen from upstairs waved as she headed out for her morning walk. Mari returned the wave, grateful for these familiar rhythms of her neighborhood. "I keep thinking about what you said yesterday," Theo continued, his voice carrying the weight of sleepless reflection. "About whether you were just charity to me." He turned the paper cup in his hands. "I need you to know something." Mari looked at him then, really looked at him. The morning light revealed the tired circles under his eyes, the way his shoulders curved forward without his CEO posture. "When I first read your blog post about Jonah's mustard-stained uniform, I wasn't thinking about charity or foundations or any of that." His voice grew quiet. "I was thinking about my mother's hands. How they always smelled like bleach from scrubbing other people's floors. How she'd pray over my school clothes the same way you pray over Jonah's." Mari's throat tightened. She hadn't known this about him. "After Sarah died," he continued, referring to his late wife, "I buried myself in spreadsheets and acquisitions. Numbers don't hurt. They don't leave, but your words." He paused, gathering himself. "Your words made me feel something real again." A neighbor's wind chimes tinkled in the morning breeze. Mari took a sip of coffee, letting the warmth steady her. "I was scared too," she admitted. "Still am. When Jonah made that announcement at the luncheon, my first thought wasn't about scandal or social media. It was about how many times I've seen rich men's kindness turn cold when it became inconvenient." Theo flinched slightly, but nodded. "That's fair. And when I hesitated, when I let Claudia and the board pressure me into silence, I proved those fears right." "You did," Mari agreed, but her voice was gentle. "But then you walked away from everything you built. That matters too." A young mother passed by pushing a stroller, reminding Mari of her own early days with Jonah, the weight of doing everything alone. "I don't want to be anyone's savior," Theo said carefully. "That's not what this is about. What I want." He set his coffee down, turning to face her fully. "What I want is the chance to be present, to learn who you and Jonah really are, not just the stories I read. To show you who I am, beyond the headlines and bank accounts." Mari studied the familiar cracks in the concrete steps, thinking of all the prayers she'd whispered here. "Ruth says trust is like doing laundry. It takes time, attention, and the right temperature. Too hot or too cold, and things get damaged." A smile tugged at Theo's lips. "Ruth is very wise." "She is." Mari straightened her shoulders. "So what exactly are you proposing?" "A slow walk," Theo said. "No pressure. No public announcements. Just time to get to know each other. To let Jonah see that adults can build trust carefully, deliberately." He hesitated. "If you'll let me try." Above them, Mari could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's radio playing soft mariachi music through an open window. The neighborhood was waking up, another day beginning. "When I was writing those blog posts," Mari said, "they were like prayers. Honest words sent out into the darkness, hoping someone would hear and understand." She turned to look at him. "I never expected that someone would be you." "Life rarely goes as expected," Theo said softly. "Sometimes it's better that way." Mari thought about Jonah's face yesterday, the pure hope in his eyes as he explained his craft project. She thought about Ruth's steady presence, about Pastor Henry's wisdom, about all the people who had stood with them. "Walking takes two things," she said finally. "Patience and presence. You'll need both." "I'm learning," Theo replied. "And I'm not going anywhere." The morning sun had climbed higher now, warming the stoop. In the distance, church bells began to ring, their sound carrying across the awakening city. Mari's lips curved into a small smile. Then we walk. Chapter 21. The Academy is born. Chapter 21. A new beginning. Morning sunlight streamed through the dusty windows of the old laundromat, casting warm rectangles across the freshly sanded floors. The smell of paint and sawdust filled the air as volunteers bustled about, transforming the tired space into something new and hopeful. Mari stood in the center of the main room, clipboard in hand, watching the organized chaos unfold around her. Ruth supervised a group of veterans who were installing new industrial washers along one wall, their experienced hands making quick work of the connections. "These machines are 10 times better than what we had at the hotel," Ruth called out, running her hand along the gleaming steel. "And they'll last twice as long, too." Theo moved between small groups of workers, rolling up his sleeves and pitching in wherever needed. He'd traded his usual business attire for well-worn jeans and a faded t-shirt, looking more comfortable than Mari had ever seen him. "The training tables are coming tomorrow," he said, joining Mari with his own clipboard, "and the computer lab equipment should be here by Wednesday." "Perfect timing." Mari nodded, making notes. "The first class starts next Monday." Through the front windows, she could see Jonah playing with other children, whose parents were helping with the renovation. They were drawing with chalk on the sidewalk, their laughter drifting in each time someone opened the door. "Miss Ruth," called Marcus, the hotel janitor whose security footage had helped clear Mari's name. "Where do you want these training manuals?" Ruth directed him to a newly built shelf unit. "Right there, honey, and make sure they're organized by level." The walls, previously a dingy beige, were being transformed by volunteers wielding paint rollers. Soft cream on top, with a deep navy blue on the bottom half, the colors Mari had chosen to feel both professional and welcoming. "Remember when this place was just moldy walls and broken machines?" a veteran named Joe asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Hard to believe it's the same building." Mari remembered all too well. 3 weeks ago, when Theo had first shown them the space, it had seemed impossible. But Ruth had seen the potential immediately. "Good bones," she declared, thumping a wall. "Just need some love and elbow grease." Now the transformation was nearly complete. The classroom space was ready, with rows of tables and chairs. The practice laundry area gleamed with new equipment. Even the break room had been outfitted with a small kitchen where future students could prepare meals during their long training days. "Mommy!" Jonah called, running inside with his friends. "Can we help paint?" Mari looked at their eager faces and smiled. "How about the children's corner? We need some bright colors in there." The kids cheered as Ruth handed them small rollers and poured paint into trays. "Stay inside the tape lines," she instructed. "And remember, newspapers on the floor first." Theo helped the children set up their painting station, showing them how to roll the paint evenly. Mari watched him demonstrate with gentle patience, the same way he approached everything these days, carefully, thoughtfully, with no hint of rushing. Pastor Henry arrived with sandwiches for the volunteers, and everyone took a break, settling on folding chairs or paint buckets to eat. The conversation flowed easily. Veterans sharing stories, housekeepers discussing training ideas, volunteers planning future projects. "We've already got 20 students signed up for the first certification course," Mari announced, and a cheer went up from the group. "And the stipends are all arranged," Theo added, "including childcare coverage." Ruth nodded approvingly. "That's what makes this different. We're not just teaching skills, we're making it possible for people to actually take the classes." After lunch, Mari stood before the largest wall, which had been prepped for the academy's motto. She lifted a brush, dipped it in paint, and began carefully forming the letters. The room grew quiet as people paused to watch. Even the children stopped their painting to observe. Mari's hand moved steadily, each letter precise and bold against the cream background. "Clean hands," she painted, then moved to the second line, "full hearts." The words seemed to glow in the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Mari stepped back, brush still in hand, taking in the sight. These weren't just words, they were a promise, a new beginning. "It's perfect," Ruth said softly, coming to stand beside her. Jonah tugged at Mari's paint-splattered jeans. "Can I add a heart, Mommy? A tiny one?" Mari lifted him up, and together they painted a small heart at the end of the phrase. It wasn't perfectly shaped, but that made it even better. Real, like the people who would soon fill this space with their dreams and determination. Chapter 22. Mustard Prayers in Print. Chapter 21. The Academy is born. Scene 2. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the freshly cleaned windows of the laundromat-turned-academy. Mari sat at one of the newly installed training tables, surrounded by the pleasant buzz of activity as workers continued their renovations in other parts of the building. A delivery truck had just pulled away from the curb, leaving behind a large cardboard box that made her heart flutter. "Is that what I think it is?" Ruth asked, wiping her hands on her apron as she approached. Her eyes sparkled with anticipation. Mari's fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the box cutter. "The publisher said they'd arrive today, but I hardly dared believe it." She carefully sliced through the packing tape, and the fresh scent of new books wafted up as she opened the flaps. There they were, nestled in neat rows, copies of Mustard Prayers, with their simple but striking cover, a work uniform hanging on a line against a sunrise, threads of gold weaving through the fabric. Mari lifted one out reverently, running her fingers over the embossed title. "Well, don't just stare at it," Ruth prompted, pulling up a chair beside her. "Open it up, baby girl." Mari turned to the dedication page, her voice soft but steady as she read aloud. To Ruth's hands, steady and strong. She looked up at her mentor, whose eyes had grown misty. "Without you, none of this would have happened." Ruth cleared her throat, clearly fighting emotion. "You did all the hard work yourself, Mari. I just held the ladder while you climbed." The sound of quick footsteps made them both look up. Theo appeared in the doorway, Jonah's hand in his, both of them wearing identical grins. "Special delivery?" Theo asked, though his knowing smile suggested he'd been tracking the shipment. "Mommy, can I see?" Jonah bounced on his toes, his stutter barely noticeable in his excitement. "Come here, baby." Mari patted the chair next to her, but before Jonah could reach it, Theo held up a finger. "Wait just a moment," he said. "I have something else first." He disappeared briefly into the office and returned carrying what looked like a large picture frame wrapped in brown paper. Mari raised an eyebrow. "What did you do?" Theo guided Jonah to stand in front of his mother. "This is for both of you," he said, helping Jonah hold the wrapped frame. "Go ahead, buddy. Show your mom." With concentrated care, Jonah tore away the paper to reveal the cover of Mustard Prayers, professionally matted and framed, but with a special addition. Around the edges, in beautiful calligraphy, were quotes from Mari's blog posts, the very first one about Jonah's prayer over her uniform, the post that had caught Theo's attention, and others that marked significant moments in their journey. "Oh," Mari breathed, touching the glass gently. "Look, Mommy!" Jonah pointed to a small brass plaque at the bottom of the frame. "It says, First Edition and the date." Ruth leaned in to examine the frame. "Now that's going to look perfect right above the reception desk. First thing people will see when they walk in." Mari was still taking in the details of the framed cover when she felt Jonah's small hand on her arm. His face shone with pride as he declared, "Mommy, you're a real writer." The simple truth in his words struck her deeply. She was a writer, not just a housekeeper who blogged in stolen moments, not just a single mother trying to make ends meet, but an author with a published book. A woman with a voice that had been heard and had helped create change. "Want to help me sign some copies?" she asked Jonah, reaching for a pen. His eager nod made everyone smile. Ruth pulled out her phone. "This calls for a picture. Scoot together, you three." Mari started to protest she was still in her work clothes, hardly photo-ready, but Theo spoke up. "Exactly as you are," he said softly. "That's what makes it perfect." Jonah climbed onto Mari's lap, holding the book carefully. Theo stood behind them, one hand resting lightly on the back of Mari's chair. The position felt natural, unforced, like so many things had begun to feel lately. "Say, clean hands," Ruth called out, holding up her phone. "Clean hands," they chorused, and in that moment, with the late afternoon sun streaming through windows still marked with painter's tape, with the smell of fresh paint and new books mingling in the air, Mari felt the full weight of what they'd built together. The Academy would open its doors soon. Her book would reach readers she'd never meet. But right here, in this room, with these people, her son's joyful wiggling on her lap, Ruth's steady presence behind the camera, and Theo's quiet strength at her back, this was the real story. "Okay, now make a silly face," Ruth directed. And Jonah immediately crossed his eyes and stuck out his tongue. Mari laughed, really laughed, and felt Theo's chuckle behind her. The camera clicked again, capturing the moment not posed or perfect, but real and warm and true. Chapter 23. Ribbon Cutting. Chapter 23. A New Beginning. The crisp autumn morning painted the renovated academy's white walls with golden light. Cars lined the street as people gathered on the freshly paved parking lot, their breath visible in the cool air. The old laundromat's transformation was stunning. Gleaming windows, a new sign reading Housekeeping Leadership Academy, and strings of twinkling lights framing the entrance. Mari stood near the ribbon-draped doorway, adjusting Jonah's little bow tie. His new shoes, bought with his first helper wage from folding training towels, sparkled almost as brightly as his eyes. "You look so handsome," she whispered, smoothing his collar. "Like Mr. Theo?" Jonah asked, pointing to where Theo stood chatting with a group of veterans, his own tie perfectly straight against his navy suit. "Just like him," Mari agreed, her heart warming at how naturally Jonah had begun, including Theo in their daily conversations. Ruth emerged from inside, wearing her best church dress and carrying her late husband's carefully folded Marine Corps flag. A group of elderly veterans, some in wheelchairs pushed by their families, formed a small honor guard near the podium. Their medals caught the morning light. "Everything's ready inside," Ruth announced, her voice steady despite the emotion Mari could see in her eyes. "The training rooms are set up, and Lord have mercy, that child care center looks like something from a magazine." People continued arriving. Hotel workers Mari had known for years, church members, local business owners who'd pledged support, and faces she recognized from her blog's comment section. Mrs. Wentworth stood near the back, clutching her purse and looking uncertain but present. Pastor Henry stepped up to the microphone, raising his hands for quiet. "Friends, neighbors, brothers, and sisters in Christ, we gather today to celebrate not just a building, but a vision of dignity made real." The crowd settled, and Mari felt Jonah squeeze her hand as Theo approached the podium. He looked different from the guarded billionaire who'd first messaged her blog. More grounded, his smile reaching his eyes. "When I first read Mustard Prayers," Theo began, his voice carrying across the parking lot, "I was a man hiding in a penthouse, surrounded by wealth but poor in spirit. Then I read about a little boy who prayed over a mustard stain, and his mother who found poetry in steam and laundry soap." Mari felt tears threatening as Theo continued, "Today, we open more than doors. We open opportunities." He outlined the program: paid apprenticeships for housekeepers seeking management roles, stipends for childcare, veteran mentorship programs, and educational partnerships with local colleges. "No one who works honest hours should struggle to feed their children," Theo declared. "No parent should choose between dignity and survival." The veterans stood at attention as Ruth stepped forward, carrying the flag. Her voice rang out clear and strong. "My James always said clean uniforms meant clean hearts. He'd be proud to see his flag here, where people learn to lead with their hands and hearts together." Mari joined Ruth at the ribbon, their fingers meeting on the oversized scissors. The crowd counted down. 3, 2, 1. The ribbon parted with a satisfying snip, and applause erupted. The veterans raised their salutes as Ruth's flag was hoisted beside the Academy's sign, snapping proudly in the morning breeze. Inside, people gasped at the transformation. The old washers and dryers had been repurposed into creative storage units and display cases. Training rooms featured smartboards and ergonomic chairs. The child care center buzzed with excited kids discovering new toys. "Look what we built, Mommy!" Jonah exclaimed, running to the wall where children's artwork already hung, including his original Helper Dad drawing, now professionally framed. Mari watched as Ruth led tours, pointing out features with the authority of someone who'd spent decades teaching others to work with excellence. "See here? We've got proper lifting equipment, because backs are precious. And there, a meditation room, because spirits need washing too sometimes." The Academy's kitchen, designed for both training and community meals, filled with the aroma of coffee and fresh pastries. Veterans gathered around tables with young apprentices, sharing stories and wisdom. A group of hotel managers, who'd once dismissed Mari, now listened intently as she explained the curriculum. Theo moved through the crowd quietly, stopping to shake hands and listen more than speak. He paused longest with the maintenance workers and cleaning staff, asking questions about their experiences and noting suggestions in his phone. Near the front entrance, a choir began assembling, a mixture of church members, veterans, and academy students. They arranged themselves on the newly built risers, their voices warming up with scattered notes of Amazing Grace. Jonah, who had been watching the choir with growing excitement, suddenly tugged at Theo's hand. "Come on," he urged, his stutter barely noticeable in his enthusiasm. "Ruth says we get to sing too." Theo glanced at Mari, who nodded encouragingly. She watched as her son led the former CEO toward the risers, chattering about his favorite hymns. The sight of them together, Theo's tall frame bending to hear Jonah's eager whispers, made her pause and breathe deeply. Ruth appeared beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" she murmured. "A miracle," Mari answered simply, watching as Jonah positioned himself between Ruth's usual spot and where Theo stood somewhat uncertainly with the other basses. The choir director raised her hands, and the first notes of the hymn began to rise toward the academy's high ceilings. Mari closed her eyes briefly, letting the harmony wash over her. When she opened them again, she saw everything they'd built. Not just walls and programs, but bridges between hearts, between classes, between past hurts and future hopes. Chapter 24. Amazing Grace. Inside the academy, the morning light streamed through tall windows, casting warm patterns across the polished floors. The gathered crowd formed a reverent semicircle around the small choir assembled at the front. Elderly voices blended with children's, creating a tapestry of sound that filled every corner of the space. Jonah stood at the center, his small frame straight and proud. When he opened his mouth to sing the first notes of Amazing Grace, his usual stutter disappeared completely. His voice rang out clear and strong, leading the others with surprising confidence. Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. The pure notes seemed to touch something deep in everyone present. Ruth dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, while Pastor Henry nodded in gentle approval. Several veterans stood at attention, their weathered faces softened by the music. Along the walls, the Academy's story unfolded in carefully arranged displays. A Marine Corps flag hung proudly next to the American flag, its rich red fabric catching the light. Below it, a bronze plaque listed the names of local veterans who'd helped build this place, with Ruth's late husband's name given a place of honor. "That saved a wretch like me." The voices swelled as more people joined in. Near the reception desk, a bulletin board showcased dozens of first pay stubs, each one pinned with careful pride. Some were creased and worn, others fresh and crisp, but all represented someone's first step toward dignity through honest work. Next to them hung before and after photos of the building's renovation, showing just how far they'd come from that old laundromat. Theo and Mari stood near the back, their shoulders nearly touching. Their hands hung close enough that their fingers occasionally brushed, sending tiny sparks through both of them. Mari wore a simple blue dress, but she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who finally knew her worth. Theo had left his usual suit jacket behind, his shirt sleeves rolled up, a man who'd chosen to work alongside rather than above. "I once was lost, but now am found." The morning light shifted, highlighting the wall of success stories, photographs and testimonials from program graduates. A young single mother beaming in her supervisor's uniform. An elderly veteran proudly displaying his business management certificate. Each face told a story of transformation. The children's voices rose pure and sweet above the deeper tones of the adults. Jonah's face glowed with joy as he led them, no trace remaining of the shy boy who once hid behind his mother's legs. His small hands moved in time to the music, conducting with natural grace. "Was blind, but now I see." The sunlight caught the gold lettering on the wall. Clean hands, full hearts. Below it hung Mari's framed first blog post, Mustard Prayers, alongside a copy of her published book. The words that had started everything, now preserved as a reminder that truth spoken from the heart could change lives. Jonah's voice soared upward, strong and pure, as natural as breathing. His face shone with the simple radiance of a child who knew he was exactly where he belonged, doing exactly what he was meant to do. In that moment, he wasn't just singing, he was leading his community in a celebration of hope coming home. Through the windows, the morning sun continued to rise, filling the academy with golden light. The voices of young and old, rich and poor, merged into one powerful chorus of gratitude and grace. As the final notes hung in the air, Jonah's face remained lifted, radiant with joy, his smile as bright as the new day dawning. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Marisol Mari Alvarez, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.